You're tuned in to a Georgian College podcast, brought to you by the School of Computer Studies. Right, welcome back to our screencasts, and this is part 4 of Practical 2 assignment, and here I want to talk about JavaScript and jQuery and how it all works. So if you've done JavaScript before, you'll notice that just JavaScript looks a bit different, and that's because we're using jQuery. And jQuery again is an API. It's a framework. It's got functionality already there that normal JavaScript doesn't have, and it's great functionality. So the first thing you'll notice is that that everything here is inside, right, this $document.ready function, right, and it goes all the way down to the bottom. All right, so let's talk about this. So $document is that's how jQuery refers to the whole page, the whole HTML. And when the HTML is fully loaded, up, well, it's got its different elements. So we got a form, we got a select, we got the options inside the select, an input here. This input is inside that form, select is inside that form, and so on and so forth. So when it fully loads, the browser will create a document object model, a DOM, so that it knows exactly where things are on the page. As well, it knows when things are tagged. For example, this form has been given the ID converter, and it'll know that. The DOM will know that, and that's great because with JavaScript we can manipulate the DOM. So that's very, very important. So here, this is saying once the whole DOM is been downloaded, when it's all set up and everything, and it's ready, when the document is ready, let's perform this function. So that's what's happening. We don't want to perform this function until the DOM is ready, because we're going to be accessing parts of the DOM, so we have to wait. And again, this is part of jQuery that we can do this. Say wait till the DOM is ready. And so here we're accessing the DOM. For example, what is that? $number sign number 1 dot val 0. So what does that mean? Well, if you notice, there is an input element in the HTML that has been given the ID number 1. So that is a match. That is, here we're saying put a 0 in that input box, like right here, right? But well, what if we don't want it to be 0? What if we want it to be something like 550? So let's see what happens. So I'm going to save the JavaScript onto here, and I'm going to refresh my page, and notice now it says 550. So what happens is the page reloaded. Once it was ready, once the DOM was ready, the first thing that was executed was that line, this one, $sign quote number sign number 1 quote dot val 550. So it places 550 into that input box. So to get at elements that have been tagged, use $sign bracket, and inside the bracket, inside quotes, you put in the name of the ID tag, preceded by the number sign. And in this case, because it's an input element, we use the val function. Every input element has a value, and there's a val function that either allows us to put values in the input box or grab the value that's there. Now, number 2 is the span right here. So number 2 is span, and notice, right, it's empty right now, but it ends up with a 0. Or let's say we did that and we refresh, note that now it has hello inside of that, right? Again, when the DOM loads, when the page is on, it's actually empty. But here we put in a value after it's all loaded. So that's what the val, and notice that this one is .text instead of .val, because spans don't have values, they have text. All right, so here we have a converter. Sorry about that. Here we got converter, and converter itself is the form. Converter itself is the form, and the form has a submit element, and the submit element in this case it's an input element, has a default value that if you click it, it'll send data to the server. But in this case we don't really want it to send data to the server. So here what we're saying is we're going to reprogram the value, the behavior of that submit button. So we say $number converter dot submit, and here's the function, here's the programming for that submit button. First, here's a variable in JavaScript, var n1 equals, this time val bracket bracket, which means give me the value that the user might have typed into that input box. And here we have a temporary n2 we're going to use in our conversion. Now note this one, convert from and convert to, that refers to the select elements right here. All right, and here we're asking JavaScript to give us the value that the user selected on the drop down. And now once we have that, and here we put them in variables, once we have that we can check the variables. If they're the same, then really there's no conversion necessary. However, if the first one is bits and the next one is bytes, then we divide n1 by 8 because that's the normal thing, right? Now, and this is what you're going to be doing really, you're going to be extending this else if. But what if convert from was bytes and convert to its bits? What do we have to do? Well, in that case we take whatever the user typed in the box, which is in n1 now, multiply by 8 and then send it to n2, and then whatever n2 is, notice again now we're going to send it to the span and place n2 there. Alright, so let's take a look at that. So save it, you're going to refresh back to zeros. I'm going to pick bytes to bits. If I put 10 and I hit convert to, what do you think the answer should be? You're right, 80. So there are, in 10 bytes there are 80 bits. Perfect. Alright, and now lastly here you notice a return false here. Now this return false, so normally the behavior again of the submit button is you click submit, it sends data to the server. This time we don't really want to send any data to the server, so when we say return false, we're telling the browser not to send any data to the server. Now if we said return true, it would actually go ahead and continue and send data to the server. And in some cases we'll have that kind of thing where we want to validate, for example, if somebody typed in an email address or not. If they didn't, we will say return false, else if they did, we'll say return true, which then goes ahead and submits data to the server. Alright, so that's the quick JavaScript screencast.